Under the dim light of Los Angeles as night fell, darkness hung over the Spencer house like a dark spirit that foretold tragedy. Will lay on the bed, his breath thin and fragile, his youthful face twisted by nameless fear, the sleeping pills scattered like cold blood, the unsent text messages still glowing on the phone screen, hinting at a psychological storm waiting to explode. Electra stood in the doorway, her eyes cold as she realized that the man she loved was no longer the calm, confident young man she had once been. She saw something else in Will, not just fatigue, but a deep hole that was devouring his soul. She had no idea that the truth she was about to face was even more cruel than betrayal. While Electra struggled with her feelings of betrayal and fear, Bill, her father, who had never shown any emotion, began to crumble from within. He wondered if he had sown the seeds of despair in his son. Bill had lived his whole life in power, in control, in a world where everything could be solved with money and influence. But this time, he could not buy back time, could not buy back peace. He was left with only fear that Will was on a path from which no one could turn back. And Luna, the woman locked behind the cold walls of the prison, heard of Will's collapse. Her heart was in turmoil. She was carrying an unborn life, a secret that could change everything, and she was sure Will was the father. Though shackled by the law, Luna still controlled the game with the coldness of someone who knew people better than anyone. She bribed the prison guards, gave money, made promises, all in exchange for a DNA sample. She could not let the child in her womb be seen as the product of sin. She needed the truth, even if it killed someone. Lee, the only doctor who trusted her instincts more than her reputation, rushed into the investigation like a desperate woman. She knew that if Luna was really pregnant with Will's child, everything would change. It could save Luna from the sentence, save Bill from the abyss of sin, and maybe, just maybe, save Will from himself. But while everyone was searching for evidence, time had silently turned to tragedy. Will's house became a scene of deathly silence. When security broke down the door, the strong smell of medicine filled the air. The yellow light shone on his motionless body, pale skin, purple lips, and a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. No one could read the whole text, only the fragmented words, "I am no longer myself. I'm sorry." The news spread like wildfire, burning away all assumptions, all hopes, all unfulfilled promises. Bill collapsed to his knees in the room his son had once called a safe place. He remembered every moment, every argument, every warning he had ignored. Will's silence turned out not to be peace, but a buried cry for help. Meanwhile, Luna sat in her cell, seeing the DNA report smuggled in through the crack in the door. She trembled when she saw the results. The baby was indeed Will's. A wave of intense emotions washed over her, both faith and despair. She did not know that while she was reading the results, the child's father was lying cold in the room, no longer breathing. Electra stood silently in the apartment, her eyes red and swollen, looking at Will's portrait. She did not know whether to be angry, to love, or to hate herself for not recognizing his distress signal. The truth was twisted between love and fear, between guilt and atonement. She wondered if Will knew of the child's existence, or if he had died believing he had nothing left to hold on to. Bill walked out of the house, looking up at the gray sky, his eyes empty like a man who had just lost his soul. He understood that there were pains that could not be cured by money. There were sins that could not be washed away by time. And perhaps he would have to live the rest of his life with an unanswered question. Did I kill my child with silence? Lee quietly left the hospital after receiving the news of Will's death. She understood that this death was not simply a drug overdose. Lee had the intuition of a doctor who had seen too many dead bodies, and that intuition told her that something was being staged. Lee began to search the prescription chain, insurance records, cameras, the names of the doctors who prescribed it. And the deeper she dug, the more chilling discrepancies she discovered. Someone had changed the dosage. Someone wanted Will never to wake up. Luna in prison began to receive anonymous letters, each containing a sentence, a letter, a question mark about Will's death. Electra is being followed by someone. A strange black car is parked outside her apartment every night. Bill receives a letter in the office, no sender, just a photo of Will holding Luna's hand in an old hospital room. The photo broke his heart, but also planted a seed of doubt in him that Will's death might be a play. As night fell, rain fell on Spencer's tomb, each drop like a knife cutting into the cold stone. Lee looked at the tombstone, her eyes never leaving the name engraved on it. Her heart filled with a question no one dared to ask. If Will was really dead, why didn't the blood sample in the forensic file completely match his DNA? Was it a technical error? Or had some invisible hand replaced all the data to hide an even more horrifying truth? In the distance, in the rain, a figure in a black coat stood staring at the tomb for a long time before disappearing into the darkness. And at that moment, a phone rang in the lab, the screen showing the caller's name. Will Spencer. Under the cold white light of the hospital, Finn stood frozen before the medical record, the bold letters cutting into his false sense of security. Dick's name appeared, along with his birth date, blood type, address, and details of his first guardian, Jack Finnegan. Finn's world exploded in a moment of eerie silence. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the page, feeling as if the space around him was shrinking, forcing him into the dark corner of a buried family secret. His medical instincts told him to control his emotions, but his human instincts began to disintegrate. Dick, the man he had thought was just a patient, was now a broken mirror, reflecting the dirtiest part of his father's past. The truth was horrifyingly naked. Jack, the man who had taught him loyalty and morality, had betrayed them with his own flesh and blood. In that moment, the image of the father figure Finn had once admired collapsed soundlessly, like a rotting house swept away by a storm. He tried to breathe, but the air was thick with smoke. Every heartbeat was a reminder that he lived between two worlds, one of medicine and reason, and one of blood, guilt, and irreversible truth. Across the hall, Dick sat waiting for the test results, unaware that a few lines on the file had tied their fates together. Finn, though silent, was 1,000 questions whizzing through his mind like a cold wind. If Jack really was Dick's father, then how long had his mother been betrayed? How many words, how many family dinners, how many friendly smiles had been a thin veneer covering a rebellion of blood? Finn felt caught between duty and hatred, between morality and instinct. He knew that one wrong word would ruin everything. His father's reputation, his marriage, the image of the perfect son he had tried so hard to maintain. But deep down, there was a fire burning. He wanted to know why Jack did what he did, and why Dick had appeared at this moment, when his life seemed stable. Dick, meanwhile, carried an unreadable silence. He didn't know that Finn's eyes were following every gesture, every breath, as if trying to read the truth from a stranger's appearance. Every little detail, from his voice, his walk, to the scar on his wrist, made Finn more convinced that there couldn't be such a coincidence. And when Dick turned to look, for a moment, their eyes met, carrying an indescribable feeling, familiar, threatening, like two separated souls accidentally reunited in a space not meant for them. Finn stepped outside, the rain starting to fall, each drop like a beat of memories flooding back. He remembered the days Jack had disappeared from home without a reason, the times his mother had cried but still forced a smile when Jack returned. Now all the pieces suddenly fit together into a terrifyingly perfect picture, a picture of betrayal, of silence, of a father living two lives. But what chilled Finn most was not Jack's guilt, but the feeling that Dick had known it all along and was waiting for him to discover it himself. As if Dick had come to this hospital on purpose, had filed the paperwork on purpose. Had Finn see it? If so, what was his purpose? Revenge? To reclaim his name? Or to drag Finn down with him into the swamp of blood and lies? From that moment on, Finn no longer believed in coincidences. Everything seemed to be set, like a chessboard, in which he had just discovered he was only a pawn. In the nights that followed, Finn couldn't sleep. He sat alone in front of the window, the streetlights illuminating the medical records, where the words Dick Finnegan repeated like a curse. He wondered if Jack knew that this secret was about to explode, or if he was prepared to bury it forever. A crazy thought began to form in Finn's mind. If Dick was his brother, then how many other children of Jack's were out there, sharing the blood he thought belonged to only one family? And if Dick came to reclaim what had been taken away, love, or identity, or even life, who would be the first to pay the price? At the end of the hospital corridor, the lights flickered on and off at a strange rhythm, like an invisible warning signal. Finn looked back, and in that moment, he saw Dick standing in the doorway, his eyes as deep as a black hole, saying nothing, just a slight smile, as if inviting him into a game with no way out. Was it the look of a half-brother searching for the truth, or of someone coming to take it all back? The bright lights of the Daytime Emmy Awards in October 2025 reflected not only the golden trophies, but also a simmering earthquake in the heart of American television. When Scott Clifton stepped onto the stage, his smile was not entirely joyful. It contained something heavy, part recognition, part closure. Because that night, amid applause and cameras, Scott admitted the unexpected truth. Liam Spencer, the character he had played for 14 years on The Bold and the Beautiful, was destined to die. Not a twist to attract viewers, not the familiar emotional trick of daytime dramas, but a real, permanent death, with no return, no escape. And that was the swan song that Bradley Bell, the show's creator, had promised him. A quiet ending, but written with all the despair of a narrator realizing his character has reached his limit. Clifton recounts that more than a year ago, he was called into Bell's office. There was no meeting, no script summary, just a private conversation. Belle looked straight at him, said clearly, without evasion, "I'm not coming back. This is my farewell song." No smile, no hesitation. In that moment, Clifton knew Liam's journey was over. He didn't argue, didn't plead. There was only resignation, a kind of silence that only those who had been soul-bound to the character could understand. It wasn't just the end of a job, it was the death of a part of him. And so, when he filmed the scene where Liam is told of his inoperable brain tumor, when he hugs his daughter, when he looks at Hope and Steffi for the last time, it was all real. Not acting, not technique, but a farewell between two lives, one real, one fictional, but both gasping for breath in the same body. The audience didn't know it at the time, but Liam's every gesture, the way his hands shook as he signed the surgery form, the way his eyes slowly shifted from pain to acceptance, was Scott's truth. He was crying for himself, for the long journey he believed was about to end. Backstage, the crew knew too. No one said it, but the atmosphere was as thick as a funeral. A character who had been associated with an entire generation of audiences was preparing to leave, and that brought with it a grief that no song could dispel. But then fate, or rather, the absolute power of the screenwriter, it changed everything. A week later, Belle called Clifton. A short call, without warning, just a few words, "I've changed my mind." Scott remembers that moment as another shock, this time not of loss, but of the resurgence of something he no longer believed in. Hope. But with it came confusion. How to save a character whose brain tumor the author himself had given him? How to reverse a fate written with real tears? The writers struggled in that crisis of logic, digging through every detail, every fragment of time left in the script, to find a way to turn death into a mind game. And they found it a blackmail plot. In the rewritten story, the entire brain tumor diagnosis was a play staged by Dr. Grace Buckingham. She faked the MRI results, staged the medical records, and manipulated Bill Spencer's psychology to extort $1 million for an experimental treatment. Liam's entire world was turned upside down in the service of greed and deception. And ironically, as the conspiracy is revealed, the audience believes more than ever that they are the victims of the truth, of the screenwriter, of manipulated emotions. Things escalate when Luna Nozal, in a state of psychological turmoil, obsessed with Steffi, accidentally exposes it all. During a chaotic night at the beach house between Luna, Sheila, and Steffi, a gunshot rings out. Liam rushes to protect Steffi, and the bullet pierces his body. He falls into a coma, almost really dead. But that opens the investigation that leads to the discovery of a fake brain scan. Liam's life is saved, but the audience's innocence is not. Because from now on, they know that in the world of the bold and the beautiful, even death can be blackmail. After the truth is revealed, the reaction from viewers is a storm. Half feel betrayed, the other half feel liberated. Those who beg the writers to kill Liam to free him from the endless love triangle are now angry that he's alive. Those who cried over his farewell scene are now confused about which emotions are real. But there's one thing everyone can agree on: Scott Clifton acted like he was really dead. He made the audience believe they were witnessing a real person dying, not in a movie, but in their own soul. Offset, Scott's life was falling apart. He was going through divorce, lost, and the plot of his death inadvertently became a mirror of his own life. When Belle decided to save Liam, it wasn't just a character who was resurrected, it was Scott who was given a chance to live again, to find purpose in his emotional wreckage. Art and life merged, turning the line between actor and character into a blurred crack, where one could no longer tell who was living for whom. From there, a lingering question haunted the creative world. Could saving Liam actually kill the soul that the audience once loved? Because when a character who was destined to die is kept alive, he is no longer truly alive. He becomes a ghost of himself, suspended between past and present, between script and reality. When Liam wakes up in the hospital, the white light on his face is no longer the light of life, but the light of doubt. He has survived, but the audience is not sure if he's truly alive. Hope comes to his bed. Bill hugs his son. Steffi sheds tears, but it all seems like a copy of the same old emotions. An endless loop, where people are given a chance to redeem themselves, but choose to repeat the same mistakes. Bradley Bell can save Liam from death, but can he save him from the same vicious cycle that has imprisoned this character for more than a decade? The story ends with Liam and Hope's engagement in the fall, under a sky as bright as a new hope. But that piece does not hide one thing. The real tumor was never in the brain. It was at the heart of the whole story. An inoperable disease, because it is called repeat. And if left untreated, it will continue to spread, eating away at the souls of every character, leaving them feeling dead. Scott Clifton said backstage that he hoped Liam would change, that this brush with death would transform him. But fans know better. The bold and the beautiful never really changes. Death, resurrection, betrayal, and forgiveness, they're all just different versions of the same old song. Maybe that's why Bell initially wanted to end Liam, because he realized that only death could break the cycle. But then, he himself became trapped in his own trap, where the audience demanded miracles, and he had to keep creating them. As the Emmy spotlight went down, Scott Clifton walked out of the auditorium, looking up at the Los Angeles skyline, the city of never-ending drama. He smiled, but his eyes were distant. Perhaps he knew that, whether Liam lived or died, the story would continue like a song that would never stop playing. And in that moment, a question rang out, like an echo in an empty stage. Could it be that, in some parallel universe, Liam Spencer really is dead, and we, the fans, are the only ones living in a world where the screenwriter blackmailed reality to keep him?